Well, Google's at it too, the search engine giant, planning to start testing a mobile payment service within 4 months that would let shoppers use their phones to ring up purchases. People familiar with the project say the hardware will come from VeriFone Systems. And joining us now is CEO Doug Bergeron. Doug, welcome to Bloomberg West.
Thank you.
So tell us more about this partnership potentially with Google using special cash registers from VeriFone.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about particular relationships in the NFC marketplace, but we can certainly say that the NFC space is really heating up. A lot of the phone manufacturers, Google themselves with Android, are really promoting the idea that, and they've mentioned this in public, that next generation phones are going to keep with them or have with them embedded a capability to pay. And that requires the U.S. infrastructure or the retail infrastructure out there to be retrofit with technologies that allow for these phones to be accepted as forms of payment.
And this service would use near-field communications where basically you could just wave your phone and pay for something, right?
Yeah, that's the notion. Although, if you talk to many of the industry participants, they're looking at a much richer experience for the consumer. Not just tapping as a replacement for swiping, but ways to get coupons back to your phone, ways to identify yourself in a richer way to the retailer, and to create a really exciting retail event for the consumer and for the retailer.
So why would VeriFone want to work with Google? What does Google bring to the marketplace?
Again, we're not going to talk about any particular relationships, but VeriFone has 60–70% market share at the point of sale today. And the most important thing that retailers have been telling us is the old methodology of paying has to work. We're not flipping a switch and going from cards to phones overnight. There's going to be a multi-decade transformation here. So since we have such presence at the point of sale, it makes sense for VeriFone to be one of the innovators in bringing this NFC capability to our existing system. Retailers don't want separate lines for different ways to pay. You don't want to send your grandmother with a credit card in lane A, the guy with a Apple iPhone in lane B, and the guy with cash in lane C. It all has to work together.
Doug, you guys are in the midst of an upgrade cycle in the payment system business. Why is that happening now, and how much longer is that going to go on?
It's been going on for the last 5 or 10 years, and we think it's inevitable that it'll just continue to go. Retailers and the card brands themselves are more concerned about security than any point in time. There's been a lot of credit card fraud over the last few years. Pumps are places where cards are getting skimmed all the time. Increasingly, we believe smartphones will be places where cards can be skimmed. So the card associations have properly been dictating higher standards for technology when you use where you use your credit card.
But isn't there a point for a retailer when what they've got is good enough? I mean, the cash register, I'm old, and I remember that the cash register was the cash register for a long time. There were minor upgrades along the way, but there's been a complete system refresh. Don't you think from a retailer standpoint, you don't want to have to buy a new machine every other year?
The fact is, U.S. retailers pay amongst the highest interchange rates in the world. And the reason for that is fraud in the U.S. is higher than most places in the world. In Europe, where chip and pin or smart cards are very prevalent, fraud rates came down. So if you talk to the likes of Walmart or Costco's, they're very much willing to increase their investment in technology at the point of sale with the hopes that eventually it'll reduce fraud and interchange rates will be able to come down.
Last week, you pointed out what you think are some flaws in mobile payment devices, and you actually singled out Square, calling for them to recall these card skimming devices from the market. Well, the potential for credit card fraud is kind of ever present. I mean, you give your card to a waiter, he can write down the information, and he can use that fraudulently. So what makes Square different or more vulnerable?
Well, just because there's other places to commit fraud doesn't mean you should be sending out card skimmers. We think that smartphones are a phenomenal way for people to pay. The VeriFone solution, which is shown here, actually encrypts the data from the card before it enters the phone. This can easily be done by Square and by others. It takes a little bit of cost and a little bit of ingenuity, but sending unencrypted credit cards into phones is just setting ourselves up for disaster. It's going to reduce consumer trust in mobile phone payment, and ultimately it's going to cause problems.
So what needs to be done to make mobile payments more secure?
I think, first of all, people that innovate have to be looking at security as a first step towards bringing these products out. Encrypting data outside of phones is one methodology, and there's others as well.
All right. Thank you so much. Doug Bergeron of VeriFone Systems. Great to have you here on Bloomberg West.